Well, Jim was not here to say something.
If you call him in or?
No.
When will they call you, said?
They're flying into Vegas, I believe, today.
Today's night.
And
But
tomorrow
tonight's-
they're driving to Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Ask Joe, I think. You shoot from there. Be a long, expensive Uber ride from Arizona.
Yeah. Six 6:30, call the meeting to order. Certified compliance with the open records law.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gillis.
Here.
Councilmember Hartung is absent. Councilmember Hooker.
Here.
Councilmember Ritzler.
Here.
Councilmember Schneider.
Here.
Councilmember Schofield.
Here.
All five are present.
Next on the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's adopted. Next, we move on to public comments. Did we have anybody contact us?
No, we don't.
Anybody, as far as any of the public comments? And we don't have any scheduled appearances. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The following matters may be acted upon by the city council utilizing a single vote. Individual items which any member wishes to address in greater detail or as a separate item on the regular agenda may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any council member. We're going to change the consent agenda just a little bit. Item number B there, that bartender's license application has been postponed, so it won't be on, so take B off. The other thing about it is with number C, since we have an item later in the agenda concerning the open container, what I'd like to do, and if there's any discussion on that, just to go ahead and move that on, so we will discuss both of those items under the police department report at that time. So basically on the consent agenda, what we're looking to approve is just the minutes from the regular council meeting from January 27th, 2021.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. We have a motion second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion is agreed to. Next, we move on to the business agenda, administration. I have had conversation with the city administrator about the front door that will go back to some counter hours beginning on the 1st of March. As we had said at the last meeting, I don't think anything's changed on that as far as how we're going to set that up, but again, that we would again open up back on the City Hall on the 1st of March. Also just reminding everybody, of course, as we had talked a little bit about before the meeting, there is a primary election coming up on Tuesday. Two things on for us, of course, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, there are 7 people running, looking to narrow that to 2 for the April spring general election. And then, of course, there's a Durand, Arkansas School Board, 3 people running for one of the seats that we'll be voting on coming up on Tuesday. Also coming up at the end of the month, we have our next regular meeting coming up on the 24th. And we're going to have quite a few things, actually. It's going to be a busy night, but as most people know, that the Countryside Co-op in Durand has merged. And starting March the 1st, they're going to be under a complete new name, tax ID. And just because of the timing and the placement when we could get it into the newspaper, their liquor license for the convenience store up here needs to be approved. So I'm going to be calling a special meeting. It's going to be mainly just the one topic for 5 p.m. on the 25th. So it's the night after, but again at 5 o'clock. Hopefully we can just get a quorum here to go through it. Is basically they just need to, I think that license has always been good. There's no issues with it. But obviously they need to make it official and put it under their new name and then also under their new tax ID number. But because of the publication dates, so we'll be doing that coming up at 5 p.m. on the 25th, Thursday the 25th. Also, Some sad news in the last few days. Kay Olson, most people know Kay, she was on our library board, passed away last night. Of course, a lot of people know her and her husband, Terry. Both of them have served on different city committees at times. We've always appreciated and of course he was superintendent of school. Some of us remember back when Kay taught. We had her as a teacher, as a substitute one time up here at the high school. So again, condolences go out to Terry and Lance and Amanda, their kids, and again, good community. And again, Kay Olson passing away. And one of our library board members passed away last night. So obviously want to mention that on behalf of the city, our condolences go out to the Olson family. Any questions? Next, as I said, we would do we took off the consent agenda, but we're just going to move it down to the police report. Move down to the administrator's report. Administrator Rasmussen.
Just a few items, and most of it has to do with some of the snow discussion that we had at the last meeting, and clearly we're not going to go into another debate on some of those topics, but fair to say the staff has had a lot of discussion since then, a lot of discussion in our last department head meeting and things of that nature. One of the things that came up that was talked about at length was some of the issues that we've had with Nixle. One of the things that we discovered with Nixle, and a little more work on this, and a lot of the credit to that goes some of Matt's discussions with Maria at Pepin County. We were learning, so basically we had some issues where people were used to be getting Nixle text messages, are no longer getting them. Some people that were signed up for both are getting email now and not the text. Again, what we discovered through talking to Maria is there was a change in the Nixle program, that the folks at Nixle, that basically, if you signed up for just text messages, and the mayor happened to be one of those, you continue to get text messages. If you were signed up for text and email, you're only getting email. So that's, we're not sure the reasons for that or what the potential changes can be. We'll continue to have that discussion as we talk further about our notification issues and some of the language within the city ordinance on that. But I guess at this point, just want to point out that, okay, if you're signed up, if you're not getting the Nixle text anymore, you better be checking your emails if you want those updates. Also, obviously, the PD's Facebook site will update on snow emergencies, and the phone line is still always available. So that's, I guess that's, at this point, I don't think there's anything that we're going to be able to change before this snow season ends. So we're optimistic that we can still use the county system again to get those items out on Nixle. But again, if you're not getting them on text now, you're not going to be able to anytime soon. So we're pointing out some of the other items, and we'll get that on our Facebook and probably the team's Facebook as well. So.
And also will be a safety meeting coming up on the 24th.
Yes, and
that will be one of the agenda items that night.
Exactly. So speaking of that city ordinance, so again, we talked at staff level a couple different times now. And looking through that, clearly there's some items in that ordinance that we want to clarify. One of the things being that the discussion of, and right now it says, as we all know, it says the phone line, and then there's a note about calling dispatch. Clearly we don't want to be calling dispatch. Dispatch doesn't want to be called either, so that needs to come out. I'm sure that was some old language of when there were no other options. But clearly we're going to put, the social media pieces. I'm a little reluctant at this point to say we're going to put any specific Facebook, Nixle, or anything else, because frankly we don't know in a couple of years if there's going to be some latest greatest. But we'll get that clarified. And again, some other clarifications, but in short, there aren't a whole lot of wholesale changes that staff is looking to implement. But that will be talked about at the mayor just noted, the meeting of the 24th, public safety, and if there's something that can be put forth, if we're ready to discuss it at council that night, it'll be on that, otherwise the first meeting in March. But again, we'll get that underway.
And the other thing too, as I had mentioned when we talked about, is also making sure we fully understand what Nixle's doing, what's allowable and participation in that, and to make sure that there's no question on that in the future. And again, that they have all that information, because again, we really don't have it all right now, but they have it all together for the meeting on the 24th.
Yeah. One kind of fun final wrap-up piece maybe about the last discussion. One of the things that did not come up was the fact that, despite the fact that we were talking about snowfall in the middle of January, it was really our first major snowfall of the season, aside from that blip we had back in October, where the snow melted in a couple of days. So clearly, that first event always causes a lot of, some frustration and some confusion. So, and this was clearly no exception. I just want to reiterate again that our staff is always open to suggestions on how we can better serve the citizens. That was brought up a couple times that night, and I take that very seriously. Some recent changes, even in downtown snow removal, bear that out. You know, changes that have been implemented even the short time I've been here, that Matt was willing to listen to, and I think is working better than maybe it has in the past. However, I think some of the criticism that night that was deemed as maybe constructive criticism at the last meeting was, I don't know, some of it, especially on some of it that was on Facebook, really sounded more like just simple criticism. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that basically, Matt's public works staff, there's 4 people there that are keeping the streets clean, and then when they're all done with that, they go back to their jobs, making sure that the water works well, and the wastewater, gets properly treated and put out. I think they do a great job, and I think most of you would agree that they do. There aren't, the residential streets are plowed shortly after the end of every major snow event. The downtown is cleared, again, the timing piece, cleared, within a few hours or 12 hours of the next day, early enough in the morning that doesn't negatively affect citizens or customers down there. And I guess, having been around a few cities here just recently, I don't think I've seen one where you have the snow removal, where there's no snow on the boulevards or the sidewalks or anywhere like we have here. And again, that's certainly not a complaint. That's something that the citizens have come to expect, and the business owners, and we'll continue to serve them that way. But again, I think they do a great job, cleaning up, and I think you would probably agree with that as well. And likewise, I assure you that Stan and his staff do not relish giving tickets and sending out, having people towed. But in order to basically clear the streets in the manner that you folks have become accustomed to, unfortunately, it's part of the process, and getting those streets cleared so that, kids can get to school and ambulances and fire trucks can get to emergencies and things of that nature. So at this point, we're simply asking, please help, please, if you can get your vehicles off the street, please do when there's a snow event. Please keep your sidewalk shoveled and your icy patches cleared. Basically, ensuring, just help our staff do their jobs and keep the city looking, especially after these snow events in the manner that we've all been accustomed to. And again, if you have suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact me here at City Hall or any of our staff for that matter. So with that, thank you for bearing with me on that one. And the final piece, I just wanted to follow up on the election piece that the mayor noted on. I think it's fair to say, Andy, elections are going to be pretty much similar to the way we've seen them the last couple times.
Yes, we're going to have.
You're coming through that. The only thing that I see that might be a little troublesome here right now is the weather. If we have people that are lined up out there, clearly we've got to get them in the building. We can't force them to stay outside like we had even in November. So we'll work through those things in the social distancing. And I think we're all aware that we're not going to have the number of people that we've had in past elections. But to be clear, we know we're going to have a lot of people probably right when you open, just like we always do. And we'll get those people out in social distance and still get them through the line. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Follow-up question, you had mentioned about making sure people are doing their sidewalks. I know a set of letters went out.
Yes.
About the same time, we got another.
Exactly.
We got some letters. And again, I have the sidewalks I see on a regular basis. It seems like things are better.
I took a guy here just yesterday, and I really didn't see any that were, and we had a little bit of dusting, so it was hard, but, it didn't seem that there's anything. And we haven't heard from anyone.
No other complaints since we sent the letters out to get people.
Some of the mail, or the U.S. mail staff has been helping us in the past. I think that's been addressed pretty well.
Okay. Any questions for the administrator? Hearing none, we'll move on to the police department monthly report.
I just have
Chief
a few
Bridgman?
things. Just to follow up on Scott's stuff, I will do a Facebook update regarding Nixle and some of those issues with receiving an email as opposed to a text message. So I will get that update out. And then Sam McGrain is our new part-time officer. John has been, Sergeant Scheller has been training him for the past few weeks. Tomorrow he works his last training shift with me during the day, and then he'll be out on his own, going for the city. Our full-time process that we're in, the applications are due on February 19th. I have 5 applicants for the position so far, and hopefully we get a good bunch of applicants here in the next week or so to hopefully give us a good pool to choose a new full-time officer out of. Our squad car has been ordered. Haven't had any delivery dates or any updates on that, but that has been ordered. And then public safety meeting at the end of February here, we're going to also be discussing our SRO contract. And I met with Greg Overspike regarding that. He's going to be meeting with his school board in February. We wanted to do them in the same month, so he's meeting with his school board. It says that we don't have to establish a new contract, it's just we can extend the contract for an additional 3 years is how it is read in the other kind, the first contract we signed. So we'll be discussing that at public safety. If anybody wants anything in particular for information, I am gonna gather budget information, calls, programs that Brandon runs, and just kind of give an update on how everything's going with that. And then we'll discuss, hopefully, signing another 3-year contract with the school for the school resource officer position. That's all I have.
Any questions for the chief on the monthly report? Also, everybody in the packet got a copy of the call report, so everybody's had the chance to do that. No other questions? Okay, we move on to discussion, possible action regarding the application for open container for the Pepper County Tavern League Fun Putt Crawl on March the 6th. As I said, we're also talking about, specifically about the picnic license for the Masonic. Now, the one thing about this is, I put them together because they're obviously both related, but we're actually in a different status with both, because we have, technically have one of the applications in our hand, the other one we don't. If you want to go ahead and tell them where we're at with those.
Sure. So basically, the paperwork came in, or the paperwork without the open container piece and the signatures that Charlene is still working on, came in, I believe, was last Thursday. Is that sound right, Andy?
Yep.
To be honest with you, I kind of forgotten what the event was coming up, but one of the things that I knew was going to be a discussion here was pertaining to the some of the COVID guidelines. So I did contact Heidi Stewart, the county health director, on Thursday, sent her an email and said something that we wanted to talk about at our meeting on Friday, or just to see if she had been contacted at all by anyone from the Tavern League, and she had not. We did talk a little bit at the Friday meeting, and it does seem pretty clear, Heidi did send an email as well, that basically she would not be able to support the event if they didn't follow the current emergency orders in place, so including the mask mandate, the social distancing mandates, and one that I'm not 100% clear on is the number of people, if there's any sort of limitation on number of people in the establishments. So that's out there. Again, I don't, at this point, I tried to call Charlene this afternoon to get over that delivery message. I don't think the two have gotten together to discuss this, but fair to say that that's something that the council is going to want to be made clear before this comes back, before we have the 24th. I'd like to think that by the time this comes back to the 24th, that it's, hey, all your questions are answered, and it's basically just kind of a rubber stamp. So if there's any issues that you have, I guess I'd like to hear them tonight so we can get those relayed to both Heidi and Char and anyone else regarding what they have.
Yeah, it concerned me, and I talked about this for the last few days as this was coming in, about the fact that we need to get all these details figured out before we do it. And again, we technically don't have the one application in front of us, but hopefully we can all get them done, and then on the 24th, we can go ahead and, but again, between staff and so on, and get this all so we can get it all squared away before we actually approve that.
And to be clear too, I mean, the council is not approving the event. There's only two items that we're approving, the open container and the picnic license at the Masonic Temple, or Masonic Lodge. So, but clearly, I think it's a fair statement that if you approve those, you're endorsing the event. So again, that's why if there's questions that need to be answered, or questions that you have, we'd like to get them on the table tonight so we can get them addressed.
And not to speak on behalf of the health department, but it seemed like they said, they're not necessarily against the event, but there are certain things that they have expectations.
Fair enough. I mean, not unlike what they approved or what Heidi's recommendations were for the two of the music events that we had last summer. Right?
Okay, so any questions on this? I would, again, I said technically we could vote on the picnic license tonight because we do have that application in hand. But, as I said, I would rather just put them both together and let's put them on the 24th. Because they go hand in hand, correct? Is that all right with everybody? And then let's get the rest of these issues worked out before we do the actual get the thing worked out. Anything else, Chief, on your end, Chief Ridgway?
No, I guess I would just, heighten recommendation, obviously, were concerns regarding masks and the number of people that are going to be in the establishments. It's a large event, and this would technically be probably one of the bigger first events since we started kind of getting people vaccinated and things like that. There's concerns there. As far as the open containers go, I think the open containers are a good thing during these large events. But again, you guys are going to have to deal with how you want to back up the event with the pandemic that's going on. And that's for you guys to decide. The open containers part, I have no issues with it. If you guys promote, or if you guys are okay the event or the picnic license, then I'm okay with the open containers.
Okay. Any questions, staff, on this? If not, we'll have it on the agenda for the 24th and hopefully be able to finalize everything that night if possible. Okay, we move on to the fire department. Monthly report, Chief King.
You guys got the report in front of you. I can go through the whole thing. The biggest thing in there is firefighter of the year. Luke Hayden was the winner this year. You see Luke out and about. He's really, since he started working for the sheriff's department and dispatch, he's had a lot of time on his hands, and all of his free time is now spending at the fire home. So we're making to-do lists, doing a lot of, he does a lot. So if you see him out and about, just say congratulations to him. And he did get submitted to this Wisconsin State one, and I think he's got a good chance at placing that. Other than that, we did open house for interviews. We got like 5 applicants, and we're going to hire 3. We're going to start interviews probably the end of the next couple of weeks. Other than that, it's been very, very slow. With this cold weather, I'm very happy.
Yeah.
That's all I got. It's been quiet, so.
Any questions on the report from Chief King? Hearing none, next we have approval of the fire department officers. We have he handed out a list prior to the
That's on the back side of the report.
back side of the report.
And that, as noted on top, is all the same as last year. Nothing changed.
Any questions on that? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the fire department officers for 2021? Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the fire department officers as listed. Any more discussion?
Maybe just again as a reminder, and we talked about that, and we talked about this every year, I guess, but this is part of the fire department bylaws. And so basically, it's why you're asked to approve it. I think we talked about whether or not we have ambulance officers as well, and yes, we will have that going forward as well. So.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion's agreed to. Next, we move on to the 2020 Fire Department Annual Report. Chief?
So in front of you, I gave you 2 copies actually. One says city, one says rural. The rural one's just for take home with you. If you guys want to see what goes on that side. The city side, we had 19 calls, estimated $22,000 of loss. We're pretty fortunate this year in the city. In rural, we had 74 calls for just over $300,000 loss. Again, this annual report is something that we've always done. If you guys want to see it every year, otherwise it's been tradition, I guess, since Pitt's been chief. So if you got any questions on there?
Do you have any sort of comparison to other communities our size? I mean, clearly this looks really good. I don't know if our fire inspections.
Our fire inspections
can't be hurting, right?
have helped. Like one thing I've noticed, and like I talked to the building inspector to do too, is a lot of the homes are starting to get sold and resold. People are fixing things up. The community is, a lot of the older homes are getting remodeled or at least, fixed up, or, so it's helped a lot for. The main street doesn't help, that none of the businesses are there either, but. So that's kind of a downfall. But usually we have a house fire or 2 in town, randomly. But this year we didn't have any. we had a lot of power line down. That was kind of our hot spot in town. So it's- Yeah, and then with the new pulseless non-breather calls, did you talk about that, Scott?
I did not.
So the ambulance mic, so any pulseless non-breather call where a patient is not breathing, not coherent, they're gonna start paging the fire department with the ambulance for an extra set of hands. And that's, we implemented that a week ago, and we had our first call out last night, and it worked out very well. So the run numbers are gonna come up a little bit. That'll all be,
So you're the muscle?
we're the muscle, and we do CPR. We're all certified for first aid CPR, but they do all the EMS side. A lot of that stuff, when you do go to them calls, it's the time. How fast you can get in, get the care done, get them up, get them to the hospital. So it's, with the staffing we have with the ambulance, a lot of them are college students, you know, males, females. People around here have stairs, whatever, to get them in and out. So with 2 people, it's very hard to get somebody there. Most of the ambulance calls, they try to get people to walk to the cot or to the front door. You know, if they can. You know, not everybody can, of course, but if they can, they try to get them done. So.
Any other questions for the fire department? Someone like to make a motion to accept the 2020 annual report?
Make a motion to accept the 2020 annual report from the fire department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the 2020 annual report. Are there any more questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Next we move on to ambulance monthly report. Or do we have anything?
We don't. Fortunately, Director Miller he's got a, you know, clearly he's retired from, as you all know, from Eau Claire Fire. He does have a Wednesday night gig though that conflicts with these meetings, unfortunately. And he did contact me earlier today and said that he wasn't going to be able to get his report in. Try to get him to meetings. You know, if we do have a meeting on the 25th, being a Thursday night, you know, for just a little bit, I may have him try to come to that meeting just so he can come here and get here in front of you folks. And again, we'll try to work out something a little better with the Wednesdays. But yeah, I guess clearly he's in town a lot. I mean, we see him a lot on any days other than Wednesdays. You know, he and Davey have been working together on some things, and so I think things are going very well with Mike, and some of the cooperation pieces and some of his suggestions are working out very well. I'd just like to get him at your meetings here a little bit more often, so we'll continue to work on that.
I have no idea if the citizen's actually watching the meeting or not, but I just got a text from someone wanting to know if it'd be Fun Fest this year. By the way, the answer is we're not sure yet, but obviously we have already been contacted about it. And again, I'm going to give my opinion right now. I'm a light at the end of the tunnel kind of guy. I've already said that once tonight before the meeting, is I hope to believe that the summer events will be able to happen. There still may be some restrictions, but I sure hope so. But as I said, we have been contacted, so but we'll be dealing with that in the next few months. So,
Dave, I'm sorry, if you might, Mayor, do you want to talk about your event? Just you.
For the fire event?
Yeah.
I didn't put it on there because actually we're gonna have a fundraiser committee meeting. We have a committee of the fire guys. Matt leads it actually. But we're gonna meet here, but kind of the topic right now is we're gonna hold off. Ours is usually May, it should have been May 15th this year. And I think it's just gonna be way too soon to roll the dice to plan that big of an event. And then if there's still lots of restrictions, the turnout could be low. So we're gonna push towards summer, fall, and hopefully by that time frame that we can at least have a group that large. I mean, it's large. It's probably just as large as Summerfest. We usually roll, 1,000 meals?
1,000 people through the door.
1,000 people through the doors. Throughout, that's the whole day.
Clearly, we'd like to think that anyone who wants to be vaccinated should be vaccinated by that time.
I'm hoping.
good with that?
And again, and the health department has said as such, so we're hopeful.
Okay, next we move on to Public Works Utilities, Engineers Report.
Should have handed this out before you. February 18th is the open house for the Laneville and Dryer portions of the project. And here's your official invitation. You don't have to come if you so wish not to, but you can if you want to. As far as the rest of the project, we should have 90% plan set done by the end of this week for Laneville and Dryer. And 3rd Avenue East is just about 100% done on plan set and review. And again, bids will be starting to be advertised February 25th for about 2 weeks. So we haven't exactly set the time and the date of the bid opening, but bids will come out starting the 25th of February. So any question? Other than that, they're diligently moving on with our construction projects. That should be about it for engineers report, unless you got any questions of the projects.
Okay, Public Works, Utilities, monthly report.
A couple things. Number one, I'd like to talk about the freeze warning. Normally, we issue a freeze warning for running water. People get a little confused about how that works. When we start getting long, cold stretches like this, they get a little anxious to run their water. It actually has really nothing to do with the ambient air temperature. It's all about the frost depth in the ground. So currently we're only at 3 feet. We just hit 3 feet of frost in the frost gauges that we have in the highways. We just hit that on Tuesday. So we're still working through that. Last year we hit a maximum depth of 3.6 feet or 3.5 feet, and we never issued a freeze warning. We had 2 people that we know have shallow services, so they got personal phone calls. But everybody else outside of those 2 people never had any issues last year, and the frost went 3 foot 6 inches. So until the frost level gets down below 3 foot 6 inches, it's just a waiting game. But I know people get a little anxious when we have a week's worth of below zero weather. So that's where we sit with that right now. The LEDs that were ordered for the street lights for 2nd Avenue and then kind of down here behind the shop were finally shipped today. So they'll be shipped to Richardson's, and then hopefully when it warms up, we'll get them installed. I wouldn't plan on that happening anytime the next, well, it'll probably take a week or 2 for them to get from California to here, but we'll get them put up after that. The truck is still being assembled. Once you know, the gentleman who's assembling it is now quarantined, so now I'm pushed back a little bit longer. So it'll get here hopefully we get to use it this year. So the guys, you know, people often wonder what we do when we don't have snow to plow. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into making sure that your drinking water, comes out your tap and the sewage goes away from the drain. You know, there's all of our stuff in the water and sewer department is basically inside. So during the winter, we change oil in all of our pumps, and we do a lot of greasing, we do a lot of maintenance. We're constantly working on that equipment. So you basically drive by and see trucks sitting outside of buildings. They're not in there eating coffee or drinking coffee and eating donuts. They're in there, working on pumps and changing oil and testing water and the things that are required of them to do. So we have the same amount of work in those departments year round. Snow is actually more of a nuisance for us than anything else. So just kind of touch on that just a little bit. We did have some furnace issues today down at the sewer plant. The furnace on top of our headworks building actually quit. We've had a lot of issues with this furnace, and over the last 10 years we seem to stick a few $1,000s into it every year. Thankfully this year was just a fuse issue, so a couple dollar fuse, we got our water fixed up. So People say why we stick that kind of money into that furnace, because it's a $40,000 furnace, so we don't want to buy a new one. It's easier to stick $500 to $1,000 into it to keep it running, so. Other than that, everything through this cold snap is functioning properly, so hopefully we can weather the next 5-6 days here of sub-zero weather and start climbing a little higher in temperature. Other than that, unless you guys have any questions for me, that's the gist of my report.
Any questions on streets and utilities?
Everything on the timeline for our RDC or whatever.
Yep, everything's on, so far on the timeline. All the paperwork has been submitted and they're starting the process to assemble it, so we're still on timeline for about May.
Anything else? Next, we have discussion possible action regarding the 2021 Taran Park swimming pool season. The one thing you will notice, and the city administrator and I discussed this before the meeting, being it's a resolution, we actually should have it listed as a resolution on the agenda. So the actual voting on it will not take place tonight. If anybody wants to discuss it tonight, we're open to do that. Everybody's got, again, it's the same wording that we've used now for the last number of years to state about opening the pool. But as I said, as far as voting, we should have that resolution listed on the agenda, so we will not vote till the 24th. But again, I would like to open up, if anybody has any questions at this time, again, we'll have the opportunity to have any discussion at the next meeting when we actually have it on to vote. If anything to put in there on that issue?
From the standpoint of sculpture. It's about the same time we have this resolution every year. We did have a contact from one of the members of the pool organization was wondering if we were going to do it and what the plans were. Again, I assured them that budgetarily it was in the budget, just like it always has been. The only thing I guess I would note on this resolution that is different than in past years, and I think we've been doing this since about 2015, as the mayor noted, it's pretty much the same, except for letter E. We did add this year just some verbiage on, obviously, our consultation with the county health director regarding the COVID pandemic and whether national, state, or any local health directives would either prevent us from opening the pool or potentially closing it down after a word of it. I just thought that verbiage should be in there this year. We sure hope so, Travis. Yeah.
We hope it's just
The
part of
sooner the better.
it. It doesn't come into effect.
Correct.
How's the fundraising coming? Anything?
I think we've had, and the mayor has had some contact with them. I don't want to point this out to be negative or anything, but we've had some discussions. There are some folks, some staff, I heard they're doing really well. They're up to $800,000. Just to note that the $800,000 does include the city's portion, the $500,000 that we committed to, and the $2.25 for the school, and so at this point, I think whatever it was, just over 20,000. If you heard me, something like that. Yeah. I get it. For just the organization on top of those other ones.
I have had some contact with some members of that thing, and they do have some other ones that they are working on. Just they were not able to make any announcements on it, but there are some other ones that they're working on. Okay, any other questions on this? Again, as I said, as far as the vote, we'll put it on so we have it listed as a resolution in the next in the meeting coming up. Next, we have overview of the current special assessment policy in preparation for the open house coming up on the 18th. There was a couple things that people had asked from the last meeting. Well, first of all was everybody gets a copy of the actual, so everybody has it, was included in your packet. And then again, the other thing was, so we have the opportunity to, again, if there's questions tonight, we'll go ahead and take them. If there's anything else that you want to add, and so on. But again, this decision will be coming, but again, we want to obviously make sure everybody's fully and obviously you highlighted the most important things that stand out specifically in the policy.
The only thing I wanted to note, and we'll kind of turn this maybe a little over but so we did have a lengthy discussion at the department head meeting of, okay, we know we have an open house coming up. We also are aware that there's been some discussion here at the council level of maybe some potential changes to the ordinance or at least some discussion of potentially changing it. So then what do we do in the meantime when we know we're going to have this open house that people are going to be asking? At this point, I guess what we're gonna have to tell them is, this is the way the ordinance is written right now. So this is basically, what your special assessments would look like. But clearly, we understand as staff that there may be changes in the future if you both decide to do so. Again, as the current ordinance is written, as Matt has laid out in the highlighted areas here, there are certain sections that basically call for this level of assessment, or the other option you have is not to assess at all. That's part of this current ordinance. But, so that'll be our explanations when people have questions next Thursday.
And one other thing about the open house on the 18th is it gives anybody who lives on that road to come down, and they can get a picture of what's going to happen with their property. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing as far as what's going to happen to my property. That's probably the most important thing to most people. But again, they will have that opportunity on the 18th, even though the final, and again, once it comes down to doing this, but we actually have to have a hearing to do a special assessment. There's a number of steps that we need to go through the process. But again, it'll be a great opportunity. Hopefully, as many people that live along that own property along Laneville will be able to get those answers. They'll be able to see, and of course, some that live on Dryer Street also.
Yeah, this is purely informational. This is not part of any special assessment process or anything like that. It's really to answer questions to the best of our ability. And clearly, if there is a decision on special assessments made to go forward with them, there has to be legal, public hearings and notifications and things of that nature. This meeting next Thursday has nothing to do with any of that.
I think we've always worked out well to have those open houses so people get a picture and know what's going on. And I think it just makes sense. It keeps people informed. And where we're at. Okay, so again, as we said, the overview. Matt, is there any other, what you'd like to add?
This is the special assessment ordinance in general. You can see here, it's, about 5-6 pages long. It covers pretty much a gist of everything, but I highlighted the parts of this ordinance that only pertain to this particular project. So, if you flip through there, that's what all the highlighted areas are for, just pertain to the Laneville Dryer Street project. Nothing on there that I haven't already explained, unless you have any questions. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory.
The other thing on the 18th also is you'll be able to answer the question, the estimate for their property, if they ask that question. Right now, I said if what the per linear foot would be, at least to give people an estimate. Are you going to be able to do that on the 18th?
Yeah, right now, our preliminary estimate is $42 a linear foot. I'll have a better, that's the number I have to roll with until bids come out here in the middle of March. Once the bids come out in March, we can basically look at the bid numbers and get a better linear foot number than 42. But that's the number that I basically have to go with off of our estimated costs currently.
I would also note that on those sidewalk surveys that we sent out, that number was also in there as well. And again, it was primarily a sidewalk survey, but we wanted to make sure that they understood that the $42 was the other piece. I think the sidewalk 38.
Sidewalks are 38
38
alone, yes.
estimate, so again, that number's out there.
Any other questions?
Councilmember Hooker, you asked last meeting about number of properties that got grant in our last projects.
Yep.
So 7th Avenue project, the Washington Street project, the Madison Street project, and I have included the 3rd Avenue properties for this current 3rd Avenue. It's 147 properties in the city that have been helped with aid of federal grant dollars. There's approximately 930 properties in town, so that's roughly about 16% of the properties have been affected by grants.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions? Again, this is if you haven't had the chance to read it, if you do have the opportunity to come down on the 18th, I stopped in at the last one when we had, just for a few minutes, and to do that. And of course, anybody out there who might be, if for some reason you cannot make it on the 18th, contact City Hall, and we'll make arrangements to speak with them, to come in and have an individual meeting if necessary. It's always nice because if you come on the 18th, we have not only city staff there, but we have Cedar Corps people there, and so we could pretty much get to, as far as most of the questions answered. But again, if somebody absolutely couldn't, just call City Hall and we'll make arrangements to get them the information or to meet with them. But again, the 18th is the best because again, we have everybody here.
Yeah, these letters were mailed out, and people had gotten them starting the first of this week, and I have had about half a dozen phone calls from people that can't make it, that asked specific questions about their property. So again, if since we're on the camera, if anybody listening can't make that, feel free to call down here, and we'll definitely walk through it on the phone. Or if you need to come down here during business hours, we can chat about it in person as well.
And the other thing about it is, we always do our best to go out of the way to try to work with all property owners with the project coming up, and as far as if there's any specific issues for certain properties, we try obviously do our best to work with those folks. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, let's pay the bills. As we mentioned about upcoming things, of course, the open house we just talked about. There will be a safety meeting at 5 p.m. prior to the regular city council meeting on the 24th. And as I mentioned, there will be a short special meeting at 5 p.m. on the 25th for consideration of the liquor license for, actually, Clerk Morgan, do we have the name yet?
Landmark.
It
It's
is going to
still, yep, it's going to be Landmark, but it's going to still be doing business as their MC store.
be, let me do that one. Okay. Any other committees that need to be meeting at this point? I'm assuming at Chief Ridgeway, as far as the safety, will be setting the time for the meeting for interviews. Which of course is a closed meeting, but we'll be finding a time to do those once you get all the applicants in order and review all of
Scott and I will set the time.
and set the time.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned at the last, but try to get probably a late afternoon early, just in case we have applicants that, maybe can make late afternoon or evening, depending on maybe have. I think we've always tried to accommodate people,
Yeah.
start at 3 or whatever, and then if somebody's got to be a little later, we can put them toward the end. It always seems to work out.
Just need one, please.
Take care of the old guys.
Take care of that. It doesn't go undone, so over on that side of the table.
With the liquor license, we'll walk through. We're going to prorate when they apply, right?
That's what we had talked about, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so nothing's clear enough to go on.
No, and I think that's, even for this one, then Angie, that would be
Probably is, yeah.
that we prorate that as well, something, with the staff recommendation.
Because co-op is paid for
Right.
the whole year, so.
A lot of good stuff.
I was there like the first week, and they've obviously added quite a bit of stuff. I got heat right now. I've been trying to get a heater for 3 months, nobody had heaters.
And we get rid of it.
Agent, I think it's still the same one, but, Jennifer has to get down, so I'm sorry, I never have it. It's still working. I don't need
I'll make a motion, we approve the vote.
Second. We have a motion and second to approve the vouchers. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gillis.
Yes.
Councilmember Hooker.
Yes.
Councilmember Raisler.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Councilmember Schofield.
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion's agreed to. If there's no other business to come before the council, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
We have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. We are adjourned.